Chapter 9 deals with the software applications that are necessary to get your e-commerce site up and going and functional. On the one hand, I could say fast forward to the end of this chapter. Don't try and do it yourself. Just go with a web hosting vendor that has all of it pre-built for you and focus on building your business and don't worry about all this stuff. And I do feel that that is the best choice for when you're starting up your company. However, at some point you get to be big enough to where you say you want to have more control over it, you want to start bringing things in-house. So we'll talk about some of the key elements that you'll need to think about at some point in the future. But again, I strongly recommend stay focused on your business, tap into and leverage the excellent choices that are available out there, and they're very reasonably priced. If you do your shopping around, you can find out there are good product offerings that are well within anyone's budget. So one option you do have as a business is to self-host. But as I mentioned in the last chapter's lecture, that brings in, not only do you have to buy the hardware and then the software, then you have to have an IT person set it up. You have to think about your site needs to be up 24/7, 365. You need to have backups, and so the costs and everything else just keeps piling up. So that's why it's usually only large companies that decide to self-host. As I mentioned a moment ago, there are some really great web hosting service providers out there. Some of them, Yahoo has a whole suite of products for their what they call Yahoo Small Business that are designed around small business owners. GoDaddy is one that I personally use for my own websites. They have great tools, reasonable price, and the one thing that's most important to me, they had excellent customer support, technical support with people who had just superb English speaking skills. You'll hear the term commerce service providers, CSPs, and those are just the companies I'm mentioning. A lot of times the web hosting company and the CSP are the same. They're integrated in, so your web hosting company is offering that, you know, as a complete package. You know, sometimes they give you the option to where you don't have to buy the particular software you need. You are just renting it or paying a monthly fee. And so you may also see the term they're managed service providers or application service providers. Any e-commerce solution, there are some basics that you have to provide. You have to have a catalog display. You have to convey to your customers what the realm of products are that you have to offer. And of course, you have to have a shopping cart. You have to have some way for them to select the items they want to then be able to take to the checkout, you know, to complete the transaction. And of course, that involves, there has to be some way of processing the payment. And again, if you're hosting this yourself, you end up having to set up a merchant bank account and negotiate, you know, with the providers that provide merchant access and all that. Again, why not just deal with a web hosting company that has all of that taken care of for you? So as you get to be more sophisticated, although a lot of these web hosting companies that I'm making reference to offer these features as standard in their packages, but things like side-by-side product comparisons, I love that, to where you can say, well, I'm not sure, you know, I'm kind of leaning towards Model A, but Model B looks nice, and Model C has got a nice price point. What's the difference between those three? Now, the key to making that work is you have to load in some useful parameters into your product description database so that there's something for the side-by-side comparison to pull up and compare that is meaningful. You know, just saying, okay, here's the size and weight, well, big deal. I want to know, you know, take a computer. I want to know how many USB slots does it have? How many PCI expansion slots? You know, what's the standard RAM? What's the maximum amount of RAM it can have? So forth. So you need to think about the key attributes that your customers would want to know about, and then you have to load it in for all those products that you have in a certain category. So when it comes to actually displaying your products in the catalog, you know, typical way was to have a static list, as we'll see in a minute, but really what people want, the same product may be appropriate in multiple departments. So I can't have my product only associated with a specific department. I need to be able to say this product could be displayed in home goods, or it could also be displayed in outdoor, you know, living, or it could be displayed in the gifts section. What, you know, you need to be able to assign multiple groupings to a particular product so that people can find, you know, and see everything that's appropriate for them. That's as opposed to, like I said, this static catalog was just the traditional, think of the traditional paper catalog. You've got a product on a certain page under a certain category. It's only appears once in the paper catalog. And so it's static, as opposed to what I was describing earlier. You're really assigning attributes so that you dynamically build that page. Based on the filters that I've put in my search, you create a custom results page for me of everything that matches those parameters I've put. Okay, let's move on to the shopping carts. In the early days, we didn't have shopping carts, but now you'd be crazy not to have a shopping cart. So they're standard. Everyone has them on their e-commerce site, keeps track of the items that you've selected, you know, lets people view their cart contents, add or remove, change the quantity. All of that should be as easy as possible. You know, make sure that you don't have to do a lot of different click-throughs in order to, you know, make simple changes like that. It's really great. A lot of sites have implemented something called one-click checkout, to where if you've stored payment information, ship-to information, you know, previously in setting up your account on that site, if nothing's changed, you just hit the one-click checkout, bing, I'm done. If you know you're going to make a change, then you say, no, I want to go through the whole checkout where to ask, where do you want it shipped to? How fast? How do you want to pay for it? All that good stuff. Another great thing with the shopping cart is you want the ability to save the cart. You know, I'm not ready to check out yet, but I don't want to have to start all over again, so I'm going to save for later. What most sites do now is they automatically save your shopping cart. So periodically it is saving the contents of your cart. So if you leave, if your computer crashes, whatever, you come back to the site, it remembers, picks up right where you left off. And of course that's done through cookies. And hopefully your customers have agreed to have cookies installed. That's one of the real advantages of letting someone install cookies on your computer, is for things like that, that you can pick up where you left off. Another great thing is to offer discounts, promotions. And so you'll see a lot of the checkout shopping carts have the ability to enter in a discount or coupon code into the order and it will automatically apply it and show the person how much they're saving. Another great thing is to provide people with shipping options. How quick do you want to get it? Slow boat, get it to me whenever I can, or no, I really need it. Another thing is, especially if you've ordered 10 items, do you want them to hold everything and wait until that 10th item is available to ship so that it comes as one shipment? Or are you okay with it coming, those 10 items, maybe they come in 5 or 6 different packages on different days? So the information from one, transaction, one transmission to another, is not retained anywhere. The web, it's just like if you think of in a phone call, when you're talking to someone, the telephone line does not save what was being spoken. You need to have an answering machine or an eavesdropping machine or whatever to record it if you want that to be available for the future. So shopping cart software has to do that function. And so there again, like I said just a minute ago, it's cookies that allow that. If you have, cookies blocked with your browser, that can create some challenges. And so you really want to convince your customers that it's okay. You're not going to misuse, you're not installing malicious software on their computer or anything. It's really there to facilitate and make it a better experience for them. Now, the one interesting one I have here, and I was trying to think of an example of a website where this would be true, to where the price is changing throughout the day. The closest thing I could think of right away was eBay, where the price of something is changing based on people bidding it, but you can't, it's not a perfect analysis. There are sites, I'd have to go and check and see, maybe Home Shopping Network and some of those ones like that. For the next 5 minutes, it's discounted down to this price and things like that. So you don't get the same price an hour, right now as you do an hour from now, or as you got, yesterday necessarily. Most sites do not do that real-time kind of pricing adjustment. You might do monthly, quarterly, some companies might choose to only update their prices once a year. And as already mentioned earlier, your shopping cart needs to accept those promotions that you've sent out through your email marketing campaign or whatever, to where you can allow people to enter in that discount code. So this is really what this is, the author is speaking to here on this point, is when you do that checkout on the shopping cart, as soon as that transaction has been approved through the credit card or the payment method that's been selected, it triggers automatically with the seller's computer system. It says, okay, start the shipping process. Go pull the order, prepare it to ship, create the package label, and then, have it picked up by the carrier so that it gets shipped. This is another important thing that ideally you want to have. You want to let people give their opinion about the product that they purchased from you. Now, the one caveat I would make on this is that you want to make it to where the people's reviews and their posts do not go live immediately. You want to first review them to make sure that the language is appropriate, They're not using derogatory terms. It's not, it doesn't contain hate language and all kinds of other stuff. And it's not for the purpose of filtering out and say, well, that person gave us 1 star, so we're not going to let that one show. Don't do that. If someone was not happy with the product, you should allow people to see that the person posted they weren't happy. The main thing is you just want to make sure that the language that they used is appropriate. This point is one that really Amazon pioneered. This idea of saying, based on the product that you've purchased or the products you've looked at, are there, ancillary products that you might also be interested in? If you just bought dog food, that means you probably have a dog. So do you need a dog collar? How about a flea collar? What about a dog leash? A hairbrush for the dog? Oh, what about a bowl to put that food in? So you can have a whole number of suggested products that go along with that, and you can make the suggestion. One of the things that Amazon does, if they see that you've purchased the same item 2 or 3 times, they'll suggest and say, we'll give you a 5% discount if you sign up to have it automatically shipped to you. So you get a lower price. You also get the advantage you don't have to think about it. And it also helps them with their planning. They know that they're going to need a certain quantity of these items every month regardless, because it's set up on a subscription basis. So it's a useful thing. And as we already mentioned, the abandoned cart feature, you want to just definitely make sure you've got that so that when something, for whatever reason, the person leaves the site, they don't have to start all over. That's really irritating. So make sure yours includes that. Now, the only thing I wanted to say about databases, because again, I recommended that you work with a web hosting company that provides all these services. But, the database is really when you talk about the product descriptions. Well, that's a database. All the features are in the product database. The shipping costs are in another database. All these different pieces of information are stored in databases on a computer somewhere. And again, recommend that you don't try and maintain those databases on your own server. And also included in those databases are what are called business rules. And this really just says that here's how a transaction flows through the company. The customer clicks on submit, then that is order is sent over to the warehouse for picking, and then it goes over. And so it defines how things move throughout your organization electronically. And the one thing I wanted to mention on here is that the most common way to access database information that I've seen, especially in small and medium-sized businesses, is through SQL. SQL is a very easy to use database query language. I've written database queries in other database tools, and you have to be a software programmer to construct a query, and even then when you do it, you don't always get the results you think you're going to get, so you end up building test databases where you can test the query. And so SQL was developed as a simple query language. Oh gee, there's the acronym. For being able to easily ask for information, be able to retrieve it. So it's structured with things like, you use verbs that make sense, English language. So student records, where? GPA is greater than 3.5 and number of credits is less than 16. And that will create a list for you of all the students that match that criteria. And so it's simple English language ways of doing it. And so if you are not familiar with SQL, you might want to take a course and just learn on SQL, because there's so many different databases out there that have SQL accessibility to where you can access all that data through an SQL query. And because there are times, it doesn't matter how many reports you have had created and saved that you run, there's always going to be, you want to make a change to it. You want to run it slightly different. You need new to generate a new report. So being familiar with SQL is to your benefit. If you hear the term middleware, this is how one way you can get all these different systems in your organization to talk to each other. For example, in this case, we had our shopping cart checkout. That's our e-commerce software. But we've got our inventory accounting software over here, and they need to talk to each other. The e-commerce is saying, I'm shipping this, so I need to reduce my inventory, and I need to credit my sales account showing the transaction. And so it's this concept that you can have middleware, which is software that moves the information between two standalone systems that don't talk to each other. And as this bullet says, it's really making information systems work together. Now, the downside is middleware can be very expensive. And again, it's something you don't want to get involved with. As a small business owner, startup, you want to get, you want to contract with an organization that has worked all this out for you ahead of time. One way that that's done is through software. It's called ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. And this is really where a single system provides all the different functions within an organization, from accounting to project management to marketing, everything. The big players in this field are Oracle and SAP, but this stuff is expensive. That $1 to $10 million, that's for a very small implementation. We're talking hundreds of millions into billions of dollars to implement an ERP system on larger companies. So smaller online businesses, there are alternatives that offer similar capabilities to ERP. NetSuite, I believe Microsoft has one called Microsoft Dynamics that are set up for more medium-sized business, but for a small startup business, you're going to use whatever your web hosting company offers you. And in general, you hear this type of software talked about. It's called software as a service. So what's it cost to get your small business up and going? Well, there's no one size fits all, but generally speaking, it's going to cost you anywhere from $400 to $8,000 to get a small web business up for going. And that's assuming that you have less than 100 items and you've already got computer and internet access and everything else. And we'll look at a minute at a chart that shows what your expenses that first year might be. Again, self-hosting, you're talking about upfront costs of $2,000 to $10,000 plus all the annual costs. They include the internet connection, a server room, technicians. So your annual costs can be $60,000 to $100,000. You have to be a pretty large, successful business before that makes sense to spend, $100 grand a year. And that's the 400 to 800. You know, there's the chart in the textbook that shows what might be involved there. So mid-range e-commerce software. Now, this is where, again, you've gotten big enough to where you're thinking it might be less expensive to use some of your own software and give you more flexibility and capability. But again, look at the price tag on that. That is expensive. But the operating costs also get quite expensive. It does, however, allow you to have connectivity to databases and ERP systems. And for example, Intershop offers mid-range packages that include a number of features built into it. So once your business gets big, just know that there are options available for you that you can pull some of that functionality in-house. So again, IBM has a whole series of offerings, but again, look at the cost: 50,000 to 300,000. Ouch. That's a big chunk of change. The real difference between a large company and a mid-size is just the volume of transactions. Otherwise, the requirements are really quite similar. And so, I already mentioned the ERP system. When you're large enough, you have that many transactions, ERP may be the way to go. But as I said before, the price tag is, can be very expensive. And not just for the software itself, it's going to require dedicated computers, firewalls. It does provide you a lot of tools, purchasing, all the standard things we're looking for in accounting, being able to download electronic goods from your site if you're selling software or music or books that can be transmitted in a digital format. But now let's transition a little bit. The term you may hear is CMS, which stands for Content Management Software. And what this refers to is that on your website you have a whole bunch of text and graphics and media files and all this stuff. And how do you manage it? How do you make edits to it? It's fine that it's hosted at your web service, but how difficult is it to make updates and to, make changes, add new pages, change how the navigation flows? So it's really critical to your website to have a good CMS front end that gives you the ability to do that. And this has become especially true because of social media and networking. We need to be constantly refreshing and updating the information. Now, one key thing is you need to evaluate software before you make a commitment to buy it and use it. So having what's called a sandbox where you can play with this new software to see, okay, how does it work, and does this fit my model? Would it be easy to do the things I want to do? Does it, how hard is it to create new activities? Some of the leading vendors, again, IBM and Oracle, but again, these can be expensive. And if you say, I really like your software, but could it do this? That's one thing you don't want to do with any of these software packages, is ask for a custom version of it. It multiplies the cost several times over, and you may in fact end up with something that doesn't work right at all. When you hear of knowledge management software, this really, what it's trying to do, in the same way that inventory management software manages our physical goods, is to manage our intellectual property. And so the idea is that we want to collect and organize and share knowledge within our organization. And that will enhance collaboration and knowledge for future users. And there are a number of tools to do this. And probably the most common one that's used in business is Microsoft SharePoint. And it can be relatively inexpensive to implement SharePoint for your company. The key is, you will find, is you have to take all the documents that you want, all the information that you want to be able to search on and find, and assign specific attributes to those documents. So when they're shared, so that then when you go into the SharePoint interface and you say, find me all the documents that deal with refrigerators, maintenance issues, and it searches all your documents and it comes back. So it's a way of cataloging. The way to think of it is you're assigning keywords just like you do on a website, or when you tag a photo and you associate words with it. So then you can sort it and find those documents. The other thing that this type of software does is it prevents two people from editing the same document at the same time. So when you want to make a change to something that has been loaded up into your knowledge management system, you check it out. Others can still read the one that's online, but they won't be able to make any changes to it until you check it back in. And even then, when you check it back in, it's not immediately, the updated version is not immediately made available. It depends upon how you've set up the approval process. Can someone edit a document and it's automatically approved, or as soon as they check it back in, does it get sent to their manager for approval and then goes to another manager for approval? What is the process? Who has to sign off on something before a change is implemented? And that's what one of these knowledge management software packages can do for you. It's called Workflow. And again, SharePoint from Microsoft is one that a lot of companies utilize. Supply chain management software, and you're thinking, okay, I am involved in e-commerce. Why do I care about supply chain? As your business gets bigger, your supply chain, how you get products, whether you're a manufacturer or just a reseller, there's a number of things that go into getting those products available to sell to your customers, and that's the supply chain. And so supply chain software can help you manage that, and with forecasting, performance to your different vendors you're working with, what's their performance been? If you placed an order today, did it take 2 weeks before it showed up, or did it show up in 3 days? So a lot of tools to give you to evaluate the performance of your various vendors. But again, not cheap. This is for when you get to be one of the big players and you can spend that kind of money. To pause and show the password for this chapter's quiz. As you can see, it's application. Again, capital A. And you will need this in order to unlock the Chapter 9 quiz. If you need to, feel free to pause this video so that you can write it down. Here, this next topic is something, though, that any business can afford to one degree or another, and there are different packages out there. It's customer relationship management software. You'll hear it abbreviated as CRM. And the goal is to better understand a customer's specific needs. In the old model with a brick and mortar store, and think of the small mom and pop store, you go walking into the store and they immediately recognize you. There's a teriyaki restaurant here in town that I like to go into, and my son used to frequent, or he still does, but frequented a lot along with his daughter. And I went in there a month or two ago, and the owner is staying there saying, "Oh, aren't you Jesse's dad?" I say, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, and then how's his daughter? She's also cute." And so you have that relationship where someone recognizes and knows you. When we go to e-commerce, of course, you lose that. You're just a number. And we're social creatures. We don't like that. We like to have that interaction. So the point of a customer relationship management software package is to try and bridge that impersonal digital experience and get it more like that personal mom and pop store experience. So one of the ways you do that is to gather data about the customer activities. And that's one area that Amazon has done just a great job of. They store everything you do, everything you've looked at. That's all built in there they're doing their analysis to see based on your browsing history. If you notice, if you look down there when you're looking at an item, it'll say people who looked at this item ended up purchasing, and then lists all these other ones, saying, before you buy this, you might want to check these other ones out too, because sometimes people found them to be a better fit. Amazon is saying, we don't care which one of these you buy. We want you to buy the one that is right for you. Amazon wants you to be a happy customer. The other thing that I like what Amazon does in gathering this data is 2 years, from now, I'm going, oh man, I remember I ordered this item. It worked really well. I want to order it again, but I can't remember what was the manufacturer of that. Well, I can go and I can look at my order history for back years and years and find, there's the exact order. Yes, that's the one I got that I really liked. And so again, what they're doing is they're helping me so that I'm satisfied. That's the point of CRM, is to make happy campers. And when you do that, as this bullet says, you will actually end up selling more things to that customer. And you will have that positive customer experience. Now, it's important to maintain customer loyalty, especially when you have a long process. And so back in the late 90s, companies spent millions of dollars on systems. And it didn't work. So now they are looking at more specific problems and dealing with it. One of the issues that has come up with the customer relationship management is call centers. And I'm sure all of you can think of examples where you've had a bad experience with a call center. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them that don't do a good job on it. I've had a few experiences that were very positive. I call in, they answer and say, okay, is this Paul? Because they're seeing what phone number called in. It says yes. And I see that you called in last week with a question about this product. Is everything still working okay on that product? Yeah, everything's working fine on that. I actually have a question about a different product. Okay, sure. Tell me, and they've got my whole order history, my tech support history, returns, everything is right up on the screen. So whatever we're talking about, they know right away. They're saying, oh yeah, I see you purchased that back in November. Did you need to you need to get some more of that, or, how can I help you today? Most companies, and I would recommend to you, is you go with a package. So find a package that has the features that you want to, and it doesn't have to be huge expense. You can get some relatively inexpensive ones to start with. And again, as you get bigger, you might want to increase that further. But the real question comes, is it really that important to have a good CRM system? And I'll say yes, and I'll show you why now. They estimate it takes 6 times more time, energy, and expense to sell something to a brand new customer than to sell to an existing one. So if I keep my existing customers happy, it's a lot less work for me to sell a new product to them. Another statistic is a typical unhappy customer will tell at least 8 to 10 people, although in the days of, now the age of social media, that 8 to 10 people can very quickly turn into 8 to 10 million people when you have a post or a video go viral. And so that can really damage your company's image. On the positive side, if you just improved your customer retention rate by just a small amount, 5%, they estimate that that could flow to the bottom line to where your profits could increase by up to 85%. So just a small incremental improvement in your customer satisfaction can have a huge impact on your profitability. Here's another couple of interesting statistics. Odds of selling a product to a brand new customer, they estimate at 15%. Odds of selling to an existing customer that you already have a relationship with, 50%. I like 50% odds much better than 15%. And here's the last one that I find interesting. You're always going to have some customers that are not happy for one reason or another. But 70% of those unhappy customers will remain a loyal customer buying additional products from you if you just solve their problem. So if the item didn't work properly, the response, no problem. Let me send you another one. Oh, you ordered the wrong one, no problem. You can return that. Let's get you the one that you need. That happened to me one time with TurboTax when I downloaded the software from TurboTax, and then I went, oops, shoot, I clicked on the wrong one. That was not the one I wanted. I called up the customer service, explained what happened. They looked and saw that I had just done the order, and they said, no problem. And they sent me a link to download the one that I really wanted. They didn't say, well, I'm sorry, there's no way that you can return that. I've had other companies likewise. The pump for my water feature at my house went out. I contacted them. It was within warranty. They said, no problem. We'll send you a new one. I said, well, where do you want me to send the old one? And they said, just dispose of it. Okay, we don't need to see it back. It's fine. And I went, wow, great. So whatever the issue is that the customer has, they feel that the ad was misleading, the way it was stated on your page, whatever. The goal of your customer support team should be to make it right for the customer. Be thinking, what would it take to make that person happy? And you may have to give away a little bit of money and say, no problem. I can arrange that for you. Even if you think the customer might be wrong, but you give them the benefit of the doubt and you will retain that customer. So there you have it. That is Chapter 9.